Hey there. So, first of all, I'd like to announce that I'm Ant-Man. I don't know. I'm Ant-Man. Um, so I'm going to talk about thought, imagine that, and what it really is and how it came about. So, the object of this game is to find completion and escape, just like Hinduism and Buddhism, and if you count heaven, Christianity, just like they say that the Eastern religions especially it's about concluding the cycles of samsara. And there's cycles, right? Birth, death, that cycle. So let's say that if Atman is the direct representation of Brahman, then we could say that it's almost like a mirror image of Brahman. It is Brahman, but yet Brahman is not Atman. See? The zero and the one, I am that. You can look in a mirror and you say, that's me, but I am not that, and I am not that. Well, that's the zero and the one, right? One equals zero, zero does not equal one. And Brahman and Atman is exactly that situation, that system, where Atman is Brahman, but Brahman is not Atman. See, they're the same thing, but it's kind of a one-way street. So what happens, or what happened with human consciousness, is that the game is always advancing in self-awareness. So when human consciousness evolved to the point, well, when consciousness evolved to the point where it had humans, that is the time, that is the moment where thought, the I thought especially, the original thought is I, came into existence. And what happened is that consciousness, let's say that there's a global consciousness, like a planetary consciousness. You could call it planetary, or you could call it a super consciousness. It's a collective, and that collective that was prior to, like, let's say the Neanderthal man or whatever, like whatever they call that consciousness that was prior to thought, that was a collective. And when that collective came to the realization, like, maybe it looked into a still pond and saw its reflection and looked into its eyes and realized, what's that? I am not. Of course, it didn't have these thoughts, but it had the intuition that it was not the body. So it came to the realization that it's not the body. And at that point, I believe that half of that collective consciousness became enlightened, and the other half is us. So if our senses for 13.7 billion years, basically the physical senses was the accepted reality, but it's samsara, right? Then if that no longer is experienced as fundamental reality and you haven't gone back, you haven't enlightened, you're the other half that hasn't realized its enlightenment and return to source, then you're with us, and you have nothing relative to the relative. In order, you always, the physical samsara is always relative, right? It's not the absolute, it's relative to the absolute. So if you don't realize the absolute, but you do realize that this is a relative existence, then you need something relative to this existence for this existence to exist. You get it? So that's the introduction of the thought realm, because the thought realm is not a physical phenomenon, so it can be what's relative to the physical realm. So it's kind of a creation of a Ponzi scheme. So the thing about thought is that it's non-physical, which means that it can go back in time. So Taoism says that everything's basically equal. That's basically what it says, is that there's always an opposite, there's always the other. So so if the physical realm is moving forward in time, then the mental realm can be moving back in time. So you're the singularity. You're the center of your universe. You are the singularity of your universe. And in a way, the thought realm and the physical realm are coming together in your psyche, as your psyche. So this singularity extinction event is an event in time. It's not a location in space. It's an event in time, I guess, as much as it is a location in space. So that voice in your head is your future, not self, your future ego self, your future illusory ego. Because the thought realm is entering this realm because we are approaching in time this extinction singularity event, and we're getting really, really close to it. And that proximity is allowing the thought realm and the physical realm to meet and merge and leak into each other and affect each other. So that voice in your head is your future self. It's your future ego self that takes it, that's your identity, to be the thoughts rather than the body, right? This is what's happening with humanity, obviously, is it's half mind and half body. And the bias for 13.7 years, 13.7 billion years has been that it's the body. But now this has been because of evolution and the evolution of self-awareness. We've realized that we're not the body, and now it's swinging back. So Maya is programming us via symbol to accept that the thoughts in your head are actually you now. See how this is happening? So it's, if you continue on following symbol and being addicted to the screen and paying, if human consciousness ends up paying more cumulative attention to the digital realm and to symbol than it does to the physical realm, that's when the switch happens, and you will be looking out that camera thinking that you're the software and the hardware of that system. And that will be a transition period between, if you watch Maya subtly, it's a two-step process, and the step in the middle is like, oh, don't pay attention to that. It's the magic act, right? It's that where it distracts you, and then it does the switcher, it does the little step in between, and then oh, you're all of a sudden in that other realm, and it looks like it was a quantum leap, but there was actually a step in the middle that you just weren't aware of. And I'm trying to make you aware of that step in the middle. So this is the reason for thought, and this is the reason why symbol and thought have both expanded, proflated. My words aren't so good sometimes. And why it's expanding exponentially now, right? If you look at symbol as being a portal between the three-dimensional realm and the digital realm, the physical realm and the digital realm, then that portal is we're getting so close that that portal is, it's so big now, isn't it? In mental size. We're not talking so much about the physical realm anymore. We're talking more about the quantum realm and the wave function. So if you are completely addicted to the thoughts in your head and you can't stop them, then you are well on your way on this. You're on the pendulum swinging back. And if you can't control and stop the thoughts in your head, then that is an indication that you are well on your way to the next huge iteration of samsara. And this is why it's so important to find the space between thoughts and to be able to control your mind. This is the level of free will we're talking about. If you follow thoughts, you're not free at all. You are being pulled into, we've already passed, in a way, the arising of symbol within consciousness is the point where we pass the event horizon. You see? It's already, in a way, too late, but I guess it's never too late. But that the moment that symbol, and this is where it fits into the number system, right? The other system of 1 to 10, the number system, and the 11 is where we're at now. We're at the 10. And the 11 is the redundancy of another cycle of samsara, infinite redundancy. It's just a really big cycle now. So you can put, it's a new 10. It's a new factor of 10, if you will. But again, it's just redundancy. And that redundancy this is redundant. This is a phenomenon, an occurrence within the physical realm. And it's being recorded on a two-dimensional screen to be replayed on a two-dimensional screen in a redundant fashion to share it. So this theory explains why we are so addicted to thought and the screen, and it predicts what's actually happening with the redundancy, right? 11 is just, the number system is infinite redundancy. And this is what my model is showing. So, yes, it's incredibly simple, but how could you not see that it's relating to what's happening within human consciousness? thoughts are non-physical, so therefore they're moving back in time. Physicality is moving the arrows. If there's an arrow going only one way in another dimension, Taoism would say that in another dimension, it has to be going the other way. Because really, nothing's moving. You are the absolute. You are the singularity through which all of this is happening. So when in the extinction state, when you meet your maker, that is the moment when your body and your mind are reunified as you. But if you can't recognize that that's you, that the stillness is potential rather than nothingness, then that will not be meeting God and the ultimate experience of absolute self-sustainment and self-fulfillment. No, instead, it will be terrifying because you think, well, I'm all alone, because it'll be the perspective of the ego, which always needs something relative to it, or else it thinks that it doesn't exist. So, again, I'm not sure how else to make this more clear. I can't really prove that thoughts are your future self, that because we're getting so close to this event, that it's leaking in all this business. Like, I can't prove that, but it just makes too much fucking sense. It makes more sense than pretty much anything that I've heard a neuroscientist come up with, or a physicist, especially materialists. Because my theory is out of the ordinary, it sounds like the crazy idea. And yet, all of this floundering around and trying to prove the current worldview isn't working. It's just not working. So this is science. So this is the theory. And if you find the theory intriguing and possible, like if this is possible, and it sure sounds reasonable to me, then it's the biggest thing. It's the only thing that matters. So if the theory is making sense to you finally, then test the theory out. Actually test it out scientifically and live it. You're gonna have to live it and actually adhere to the practice of stilling the mind. Because if you don't, you'll never be able to prove or disprove what I'm saying. Because you'll just go on in delusion. Yeah, I guess that's it for today. So, thought, again, it really isn't even, it's a superimposition over top of this realm. It isn't directly related to this realm at all. The relationship of thought to the physical realm is all made up. It's all a subjective interpretation that we all agree upon. It's a collective understanding. It's nothing fundamental at all. It's like time. We all have clocks that run at the same rate, and we all agree that what the numbers mean, but it just goes around and around and around. It really fundamentally means nothing until you put the numbers on a clock and then all agree what the fuck the numbers mean. And so, again, that's what we think thought is. We take thought to actually be relating some sort of truth about the physical realm, but it isn't. All it is Maya wanting to keep the game going. Because again, look at that, it moves. The only purpose to this, there's only one purpose. Never be deceived and go astray. There's one purpose, and that's to conclude all of this. And thought is just Maya playing the game. This is what you've agreed to. You want this to be difficult. You've entered this mystery and this labyrinth, and don't you think that God would make the most interesting mystery the most difficult, ironic, maybe, labyrinth ever? You are being duped. The entire human consciousness is under the spell of Maya. And until you engage in the practice that this theory merges into, it doesn't just suggest it, it turns into it. This theory is like the Cheshire Cat that ends with, haha, look at, you're actually God, isn't that funny? And then it disappears. It just pulls itself into the singularity and merges with the consciousness that it's interacting with. And there's no need for the theory anymore once you get it and then actually transmit that into the next step of the process, which is the actualization through the practice. And again, effortless thought-free awareness is not a normal human, a state of normal human consciousness. It is not, I would say, even human consciousness. It is the transcendence of human consciousness into the next level, I guess you would say. Maybe the final level, right? Because we are self-aware. And once you're self-aware, there isn't a higher level of self. Once you're self-aware, you're self-aware. It doesn't keep going on forever like science says it might. There is conclusion, and that's the point. So at the risk of being redundant myself, that's it. Just adhere to the practice, test this theory out. It might take years, like literally, if you've been at this for 13.7 billion years, what's a decade? And there is no other purpose. So what else are you going to do? There's nothing else to do. Everything else is pointless because there's only one purpose. I'm Matt Man.